You know, sometimes the biggest wins in history aren't about getting everything right. They're about clawing your way back from total, absolute disaster. Today, we're jumping into the incredible story of Apollo 13, a mission that's gone down in history as the ultimate successful failure. For the first couple of days, Apollo 13 was just smooth sailing. I mean, it was almost boringly routine. The crew was settled in, all the systems were green, and the third mission to land on the moon was going exactly to plan. It was this perfect, quiet calm before a storm that absolutely no one saw coming. And then, just like that, over 200,000 miles away from home, in one single, terrifying moment, the mission completely changed. Suddenly, it wasn't about exploring the moon anymore. It was about just trying to stay alive. See, what the crew and everyone back in mission control had no way of knowing was that their ship was quite literally a ticking time bomb. And the cause wasn't some complex deep space malfunction. Nope. It was just a couple of simple, mundane factory mistakes made way before the rocket ever left the ground. So let's set the scene. The mission is Apollo 13. We've got Commander Jim Lovell, a veteran astronaut, along with Fred Hayes and Jack Swigert. Their goal? To be the third crew to ever walk on the moon. And for the first part of the trip, everything was looking picture perfect. The moment it all went wrong was April 13th, 1970. The spacecraft is about 55 hours into its flight. To put that in perspective, they're a quarter of the way to the moon, just cruising through that blackness over 60,000 miles from home. And this is where it all goes sideways. It wasn't a meteor strike. It wasn't some massive system failure. It was just a simple, everyday request from the ground controllers back in Houston. It all started when Mission Control asked the crew to stir the cryogenic oxygen tanks, just a routine procedure. But inside one of those tanks, faulty, damaged wires from that factory error years ago were just sitting there. So when Jack Swigert flipped the switch to turn on the fans, those wires sparked. That spark hit pure oxygen, and boom, a massive explosion. In a flash, an entire side of their service module was just gone, blown away. Vital oxygen and power started bleeding out into the vacuum of space. The mission to land on the moon was over. The mission just to get home had begun. With their main ship dying, Mission Control had to scramble. They needed a new plan, and they needed it now. The idea they came up with was radical. Shut down the command module entirely and use the lunar module, the little ship meant to land on the moon, as a lifeboat. Now you gotta understand how desperate this was. The command module was their ride home. It had the heat shield they needed to survive re-entry. But they had to power it completely down, turn it into a dead, frozen ship, just to save its batteries for the landing. Meanwhile, the lunar module, which was designed to keep 2 guys alive for just 2 days on the moon, now had to somehow support 3 men for 4 brutal days in deep space. And here's the kicker. They couldn't just turn around. They didn't have the power for a U-turn. Their only option was to keep going towards the moon, a place they now had no hope of landing on, and use its gravity to whip them around like a slingshot and fling them back towards Earth. For 4 agonizing days, those 3 astronauts were huddled inside that cold, dark, powerless lunar module. The temperature was dropping close to freezing. They were running out of everything, just adrift in this tiny lifeboat, hundreds of thousands of miles from home, with absolutely no guarantee they would ever make it back. The conditions were just miserable. Astronaut Fred Hayes said it was like being stuck out in the woods in winter without a jacket for days on end. That constant, biting cold just wore him down so much, he ended up getting a serious infection. This wasn't a training exercise. This was a raw, brutal test of human endurance. So they managed to survive the cold, but that was really only half the battle. Now they were staring down a challenge that was completely unprecedented. They had to go back into the frozen, dead command module and somehow bring it back to life for re-entry. It was a procedure that had never even been written, let alone tried out in space. And the kinds of problems they were facing were just staggering. The power-up procedure that Mission Control was reading up to them was so long and complicated, it took 2 hours just to get through it. The astronauts literally almost ran out of paper to write everything down. Think about that. In the most high-tech mission in history, their survival might depend on having enough scrap paper. Okay, so now came the most dangerous part of any spaceflight, re-entry, hitting the atmosphere at thousands of miles per hour. But for Apollo 13, it was a complete and terrifying unknown. The final test was about to begin. As they finally ditched the crippled service module, the crew got their very first look at the damage. And you can just hear the shock in their voices. A whole panel was just gone, blown completely out into space. And that sight created a brand new, horrifying fear for everyone. This was the one question that nobody on Earth or in space could answer. The explosion happened right next to the command module's heat shield, their only protection from being incinerated on re-entry. Was it damaged? The only way to find out was to actually hit the atmosphere and see what happened. So as the capsule hit the atmosphere, the normal re-entry radio blackout started. On the ground in Mission Control, you could have heard a pin drop. The expected few minutes of silence stretched on and on and on. The blackout lasted so much longer than normal that a single terrible thought started to sink in at Mission Control. As one of the flight controllers later said, everybody just assumed the heat shield had failed. They believed the crew had come all that way, done all that work, only to burn up on re-entry. And then a crackle through the speakers, the voice of Jock Swickert. "Hello, Houston. Everything's fine here." Can you just imagine the explosion of relief in that room? Against every single odd, through sheer unbelievable ingenuity, they'd made it. They were home. The story of Apollo 13 is so much more than just a mission to space. It really makes you ask, when we're faced with impossible odds, when everything is on the line, what are we really capable of? What is the limit of our ability to innovate, to adapt, and to bring our people home safe?